everyone. I'm sorry that I can't be with you there at the event. I hope you're having a great time together and knowledge sharing and interacting together in person. And I hope to see you at the next event in the fall. But thank you, Jen Kim and PESC, for allowing me to record this update to share with you today about CanPESC. So I'll share my screen with you now. I have some slides that I prepared to give you an update about things that are happening in CanPESC. And for those of you not familiar with CanPESC, I'll describe first a little bit about who we are and what we're about. So my name is Doug Holmes. In my day job, I'm the manager of e-transcripts at the Ontario University's Application Centre, or the UAC, which is a not-for-profit admission application processing centre in Ontario, Canada. I've been involved with higher education data standards since 1996 through ANSI X12 EDI standards development and use. I've been involved with ACRO's Speedy Committee since 1998 and PESC as an organization since 1997, a couple years after they were established. Currently, I'm the chair of the Canadian PESC user group. We're also known as CanPESC. This is an open user group within PESC. So for those of you familiar with some of PESC's structure and governance, there are closed groups where membership is required. So while we do recommend definitely our Canadian partners consider membership in PESC, it isn't required to be a member of CanPESC. We do have members who come and go from various institutions, from government, from organizations, and other stakeholders across the higher ed landscape. We ensure that PESC's mission and deliverables support the needs of our Canadian stakeholders as new standards are developed, as policies are put forward, white papers, and so on. Our members participate on the board, on various work groups and task forces, as well as in implementing standards and presenting about standards use around North America. A brief history of CanPESC, for those of you who aren't familiar with us. We actually have been formed over the decades now. It's great to be able to say that. The standards have been around and in use for decades. So through collaboration with ACRO, the American Registrar Association, you'll see at the top of the screen, as well as ARUC, which is Canada's Canadian cousin of ACRO. That's our Canadian Registrars Association, in collaboration with PESC. And so as the standards were being developed by the ACRO Speedy Committee initially, in working with ANSI X12 through the late 1980s and early 90s, PESC was eventually established in 1997, and along the way, Canadian registrars and other Canadian staff from institutions were involved and definitely monitoring closely and interested in all the standards development. And as PESC was launched, we had members who were participating in work groups and in standards development, and eventually collaborated officially in 2011 with Michael Sessa to form CanPESC as a user group. And in 2013, ARUC and PESC signed an MOU. And there's other developments that are shown here on this timeline. If you have questions, either after, I guess I can't answer questions for you today when I'm not in person, but if you have questions afterwards, I'll have my email on a slide towards the end of the presentation. Happy to take questions or to follow up with any of you. If you're interested to join CanPESC, even just to sit in some of our meetings, we do meet monthly via Zoom, except for July and August, where we take the summer off from officially meeting. Would love to have you or connect with you. So some of the use of Canadian PESC of PESC XML and other PESC standards across Canada is really exciting for me to be able to share. As I was putting this presentation together, I was looking at various documents we have and thinking about our stakeholder partners across the country. And the use of PESC XML within Canada represents almost half of our post-secondary institutions. So we have our universities, our sort of equivalent of the American four-year schools, our community colleges, similar equivalent to your two-year schools, and other types of institutions. At the post-secondary level, almost half of our institutions are represented by the 5 provinces shown here that have implemented and are in production using PESC XML and are considering other ways to use that PESC XML. We also have several thousand high schools represented across the country through the exchanges in British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Ontario, Nova Scotia. You'll see that high school transcript column in the middle of the table. All of those provinces are exchanging the PESC XML version of their high school transcript in various ways through central hubs from the Ministry of Education directly out to schools and other ways. But that represents several thousand high schools and a large majority of the population of our students who are applying to post-secondary education and having their transcripts shared out as PESC XML to be processed. And in many cases, those are received and ingested in an automated fashion. Courses are evaluated and GPAs and averages are calculated automatically. A lot of layers are able to be put on top of this data. At the college and university level, The other columns in this chart represent our use of the admission application, test scores, the college transcript, the request, response, and the various forms of acknowledgements. And so I was really excited to see the volume of PESC XML. We've talked anecdotally for the past several years at PESC Summits while we've been updating on what's being used and specific implementations. Some of our members have won the PESC Best Practices Award. But to put this chart together, I was really interested and excited to see the amount of XML that's being used, the number of documents that are being used. And in Saskatchewan and Ontario, you'll see that we do still have some pockets of the older EDI standard being used, and we have translation happening between the formats in Ontario, or some pockets of exchange directly between schools in Saskatchewan. I'll talk a little bit more about the Ontario scenario, where there is both XML and EDI happening, and how we've been able to harness another tool to help us with that. And I'll describe that a little further. You'll also see for the admission application and the test scores, that is only at the moment the UAC, where I work, and our university partners, not OCAS, which serves the community colleges in Ontario and their partners. Maybe another time, but that at the moment is only in use on the university side. But the other documents are in use in all the jurisdictions. So again, really exciting to put this chart together and share with you today. Also, PESC XML and other standards, we're looking at geocode, looking at some of our hubs that are mentioned here. Apply Alberta, for example, Education Planner BC may use some of the other data protocol standards that PESC has developed, and other things. Along the bottom right-hand side, I also want to highlight two organizations in Ontario that partnered with UAC to receive only transcripts. They don't issue transcripts, but our Ontario College of Teachers is the organization that certifies graduates of the Faculty of Education to certify them to teach in the province of Ontario. And QACO, which is the organization that evaluates teacher progression through their pay scale and through additional qualifications. Both of those organizations need university and college transcripts. They were able to partner with UAC already and receive those in PESC XML and return the acknowledgement to us. So we're really excited to be able to have other types of partners also involved in the exchange within our Canadian landscape. You'll also see MyCreds, which some of you may have heard of or be receiving from or have partnered with yourselves. It's powered by the Parchment Digitary platform. MyCreds is our national document and data exchange platform that's owned by Aruc and has capability for a number of document and data types. Some institutions are actually putting PESC XML into MyCreds as well. And so then as a receiver, you can choose to receive the PDF version of the document or PESC XML in the case of the college transcript, and some micro-credentials where they've modeled the XML after the PESC XML standards, though it's not officially an approved standard yet. I mentioned that I'd circle back to the XML and the EDI that's being used in Ontario. That ties into this next slide, where the CanPESC group several years ago developed a free open source tool called the Common Digital Layout. So as you know, transcripts are typically sender-centric, especially at the post-secondary level. Colleges and universities each have their own design. They may have their own branding. They have very varied formats, different fonts, one column versus two column, portrait, landscape, all the iterations and uses of that paper or PDF real estate you can think of. But it's coming from the sender the way they want it to look. For receivers, that's not nearly as helpful, and it's much less efficient in the case of PDFs and paper copies that we still need to receive in the pipeline along with data. At the high school level, the layout is typically government mandated, not always, but typically is, but it still varies across jurisdictions. And so again, there are inefficiencies for the receivers to know where to look for the data that they need to use on each of those documents for students coming from any other province. The CDL is an opportunity to provide a consistent receiver-centric human readable view of the PESC XML-based college and high school transcripts. So there is a version of the CDL tool, again, which is free and open source, and it's available from the CanPESC page on the PESC website. There are links to the GitHub repository where the CDL tool and some samples and documentation lives. And really excited that this tool is actually in production use in a few pockets across Canada. Because it's free and open, we hope that usage will grow. And as we are implementing it more and learning more about the power of this tool, users who are receiving PESC XML data in admissions, transfer credit assessors, document evaluators, are able to have a view, no matter where the document came from, no matter where the transcript came from, it can look the same to them. So the efficiency that you can gain from that is incredible, to always know where to look for the student's personal information, where to always look for the course information, degrees and programs, other special notations, and so on will be in the same location. You can also reorder data. Not all partners, when they're sending data, because data to data exchange, computer to computer, it doesn't need to know that the course is in a certain order. You can do different things once you have that data, but the CDL can resort no matter where it came from to always have chronological, for example, or reverse chronological, or group certain courses together by course code if you're doing prerequisite checking. If you want those kinds of features, that's now possible regardless of where the data came from. For the future, there are also the other formats that exist, the EDI, the older ANSI EDI, PESC EDI standard, MREX from the EU, the PESC JSON and JSON LD that are being developed. And in Canada, in the province of Quebec, some of you may be familiar with our CEGEPs, which are sort of a junior college. They're post-high school, but post-secondary type of institution. They use their own proprietary XML. And so this diagram is trying to show that if you add a pre-step, you can transform any of these other formats theoretically and practically into PESC XML, and then use the CDL to generate either PDF or HTML and have even more consistency. And so that's what we did at the UAC. We implemented the CDL for all of the XML transcripts we've been receiving. We also added a transformation step to convert the EDI transcripts into PESC XML so that those could also use the CDL. And now, regardless of which format our sending partners are sending, we can receive it and view it in the same way when humans need to be involved in viewing it. You'll notice at the very bottom left, I show a PDF image or an icon inside the cloud, trying to represent all the PDFs that we may receive from any of the PDF transcript vendors, directly from issuing schools or other sources. As OCR, ICR, and AI technology become better and better, there are definitely, some of you may be involved already in scraping and extracting data from the PDFs. You could choose to format that data in either EDI or PESC XML and also run it through the CDL tool, so that even if the PDF was received from an issuing school that's sender-centric, you can still have that come up in a receiver-centric view and harness this power even further. So there may be other ideas. If you have thoughts on other steps that could be added to this flow, or other ways or other technologies that are using, I would love to hear from you. The CanPESC group is very passionate about the CDL utility. We want to make it more and more useful to folks, and it's being promoted in various ways, in various events that I'll show you on a subsequent slide. But this is a really exciting tool, and it's being used, as I mentioned, in production at my organization and several others across Canada, some of our larger university partners, and receiving some great benefit and really positive feedback from the users that are involved in receiving and looking at these documents based on that PESC XML data. As I mentioned, CanPESC is also involved in promotion. So we do promote and use and help people learn about and share the news around using PESC standards, whether that be the PESC XML, the JSON LD transcript work that's happening, the geocode, and other standards. We have, since the previous PESC Summit last fall, CanPESC was involved in the Association for International Credential Evaluation Professionals, conference held in Quebec City. This was an international conference. So there were folks from a number of countries around the world that convened in Quebec, and we put in a proposal to talk to them about the CDL and about the geocode. Had a good attendance at the session, some good feedback from folks who would be using the output of some of these processes and were very interested in how they might get involved. Some of our members were also involved in the Canadian Elution User Group Conference held in Vancouver, British Columbia, late last fall, and a link is there for our session as well. And also in January, the CDL work group within CanPESC did a focused webinar for the Rook membership. And I've given a link here. So a Rook membership is required, but if there are any of my Rook colleagues in the room viewing this or who see this afterwards, you can actually see the webinar that was presented, a lot of details, some how-tos and tips from the CDL work group. We also have an upcoming event being hosted in Toronto, Ontario in late May, is the Groningen Declaration, or GDN, and the Pan-Canadian Consortium on Emissions and Transfer, PCCAT, joint conference. We have a couple ideas on presenting sessions at that conference around PESC standards. around the CDL, around the use of data exchange. And I believe some other PESC members may be helping out with that event and doing some presentations. So look forward to seeing you there. If you have any questions based on what I've shared today or anything that I didn't share that you're interested in, don't hesitate to reach out to me. My contacts are here, my direct email, or also my LinkedIn. Would love to connect and talk with you. And thank you again for this opportunity. And I hope you have a great rest of your conference.